Hi everyone, it's Natalie here. I just wanted to do a weekly update because I haven't been as able to have fun making YouTube videos of late because life life has a way. Yeah, I'm gonna be really authentic about this. It's been tough. Not been the most not been the easiest time lately. I got to be straight up about that. Um, a lot of life changes for me in the last 8 months, let's say. Yeah, about 8 months. Last 8 months have been really chock full of stuff. A lot of stabilizing factors that I normally depend upon, have shifted. Um, I moved house. I got not just a new job, but like a whole new career path. Um, then took my first position in that job, in that career path, and then lost the job for some not great reasons, including, long story short. I'm just gonna say where you see people working in. Got something in my throat here, like dust, or I really need to clean in the sunroom right now. Um, where you see people working in jobs like, where they've started a nonprofit organization and so on. I'm really beginning to see like a lot of times people do, good things and work in jobs that are perceived as being really good, or really hard because they can, right? Because there's something in them that tells them like, yes, this is right for me. But also, I think sometimes equally, there's something in for them in terms of hiding shadow, right? So if I'm doing something really good and it's working with, children that have cancer, or, doing social justice or whatever it may be, and just how much shadow is present sometimes in those positions. So I just wanted to name that, because it's been I can be kind of naive. I mean, for all of my like ability to see stuff, sometimes I can be incredibly naive, and I tend to credit people, people and organizations way more than I probably should. But anyway, so that was another like big, heavy, like, whoa, I did not think I could be, rocked out of my comfort zone, or even my discomfort zone, nearly that much, until I did, again, until I was, and then, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I moved house. I had just finished, almost completely finished my tiny house, and was looking forward last summer, to rebuild, restructuring some things within it, because I'd realized like, oh, this isn't going to work, or we had frozen pipes. And so redoing some of the plumbing was going to be a thing. And before I even had a chance to get into that, I realized like, okay, I can't, do another year without living with my partner. So I moved house. Um, yeah, there's just been a lot. There's just been a lot. Some health changes that have been, a little destabilizing. Woof. And I've been, like kind of struggling to. I mean, I'm a pretty resilient person, but I have struggled a little bit with. Yeah, I guess a reasonable amount. Not like severe, but like not. It's not like I've sailed through it, blissfully without any issues or anything like that. There've been a lot of ups and downs, if I'm really honest, and I'm still trying to figure out, how I'm just trying to get on top of stuff, and it's not been as easy as I would have expected. Um, it's been pretty challenging. I'll be honest, been pretty challenging. Um, So that's where we're starting today. I had a big week last week, and this is the first, I'm rocking my Sunday sweatshirt here, because this is the first day I've had off, all week, and the first bit of time, and really I'm still on call. I have a doula client right now, And it is my first doula client. And because I'm still working on my certification, it is also a position that I offered pro bono, because it's not something I know 100% about. And I am learning, like, hey, I'm totally going to be fine doing this work. This is really definitely part of my calling. So that is very reassuring. So while there was a quiet moment at the hospital yesterday, I decided to do my daily draw because I hadn't had time in the morning to do it. Despite best laid plans, the weather had other plans, and sometimes that happens. So I brought my cards with me and I did my daily draw. And I came up with the Tower. Now, nobody wants to get this card, right? Nobody wants to get this card. This is a like, what is going on here kind of card that you get, right? And it's even I was like, oh, I'm sure that's not the card I was meant to get. Maybe I need to cut the card somewhere else, right? Or maybe it was the one, and I thought, no, Natalie, come on. You know better. You drew this card. This was your card, right? Excuse me, did you drop this? So I picked it up and I really started taking in, the imagery and so on. And I pulled out the handy dandy book and thought, well, in truth, the Tower for me has always meant something very different than what it tends to mean for a lot of other people. So as I was looking at it, I thought, before I even picked up the book, I thought, don't read anything too much into this, right? Because if you're working for a doula client, it would be very easy, to say, okay, does that mean he's going to actually die today? Do I need to be prepared for my client to leave his body? Because the question I asked in drawing that card was what kind of day should I expect to have, right? What kind of day am I having, or am I going to continue to have, right? And most people tend to read the Tower as being, it's not a card you ever really want to get. It's a pretty nasty one. It's that everything in your life is falling apart or has fallen apart or is about to fall apart, or be prepared for God to rain down his, in my 20s, this is really kind of where I would come from. Like, be prepared for God to rain down wrath upon you, right? Because I still was very much entrenched in that belief system that's very fear-based. And what I found was not that. What I found, I remember, what year was it? 2012, probably. Yeah, it was probably 2012. I realized, or it may have been end of 2011, actually. I think it was end of 2011. I remember looking around at all of the events going on in my life and realized, wow, this, I think actually wasn't just then. I think I started that recognition in 2010, and it continued repeatedly, like, to be a theme through all of 2010, or a lot of 2010 into a 2011, and possibly even into 2012, of recognizing, like, I'm in the Tower. This is the Tower card. What I can tell you is that time period in my life was like no other, for any and every possible reason. It was just a wild period of my life. And let me just read some of what Marie White says about the Tower. She says the Tower and the lightning are lovers. And she says that while the devil binds, the Tower liberates. Then there was something, yes, she says the Tower is the energy, power, and life force of God, Genesis-style force to create or destroy. Now, that does feed back into the fear-based, she does come back to Western religion and Judaism in particular a lot. But she says when God strikes us with lightning, blowing apart the carefully constructed tower of our lives, we can decide to see it as a blessing or a curse. Okay? We can take that power and harness it for something great, break through the barriers that previously held us, or we can crumble and be ruined under its weight. Our choice. The lightning struck tower is a doorway to a new paradigm of self. The tower is like the Grail castle. Within it is the most precious thing, the true self, the immortal soul, and the Holy Grail. When the tower is destroyed, the heart is laid bare. And her first keyword is initiation. So I'll say this. That has absolutely been my experience of the tower. And not in a bad way. I mean, it was not an easy, there's nothing about it that was easy. There's nothing about it that I can lighten up with platitudes or, meme style, happy chat. It was fucking horrible. And it was the greatest opportunity I've ever faced in my life to really know myself, be myself, and drop anything and everything that didn't matter. Just let it fall away, let it fall apart. And little by little, that is what happened. I dismantled everything I believed. I dismantled everything in my life on every level, actually, on every level, including on the physical, was completely transformed and changed. My body and my nervous system will never be the same. And I made jokes at the time without really knowing, or not jokes, but, well, it was jokes. There were jokes really with Buddhist friends and with my therapist, that experience was a little bit like being struck by lightning, or a little bit like having all of your wiring in your body, ripped out and having it and being disabled for a while by that, and then having everything completely rewired and set to a different frequency or level of whatever, what is it they call it when you have, I guess we function on 220 over here. Let's say, having that ripped out, and the voltage, that's what I want. Voltage is completely different. Or, going from dial up to high-speed broadband, right? That's actually maybe even a better one, because there was a lot of information that came along with it, a lot of connections, ideas that came up or were made apparent. So it was a big moment. It was a big moment. So for me to see the tower card come up, well, that doesn't happen twice, right? In your lifetime, if it's really that big moment, that's not likely to happen more than once, right? If it really is that initiation, you don't go through an initiation like that repeatedly at different phases in your life, like, almost 10 years apart or 8 years apart. You go through it maybe for an extended period of time, or, as I'm realizing now, you go and revisit points that touch that moment, right, that remind you of it. And yesterday, sitting with my client, in that hospital room, I realized that's what this is. That's what this is. It's that electrical current. It's that voltage. It's that like high voltage you're wired in, and the voltage is grounded, right? Another electrical term. And you're being asked to stay and be and live up to that. Because that was also the moment that I realized I really wanted to be a Buddhist chaplain. And interestingly, on Friday night or Friday afternoon, the chaplain at the hospital came in and visited. And, I introduced myself, and he said, "Oh, I'm the chaplain." And I said, "Oh," and his name was Daniel, which I thought was really sweet, actually. It just struck me as lovely. I think he was a Christian chaplain, although he didn't say one way or the other. And I said, I wanted to, I explained that I was the end-of-life doula. And we talked about the role and so on. And he said, "How did you get into doing that?" And I said, "Well, originally I was going to be a chaplain, and I wanted to work in hospice as a chaplain." And that was a huge part of this lightning strike, right? That was the tower. Was that, and it wasn't the lightning that hit the tower. It was like once I've fallen from the tower, which, oh, there is a little figure. Wow, I totally missed this as I was viewing it. Where is it? Yesterday. There is a guy falling from the tower. Wow. I was looking for the little dude that was falling from the tower yesterday, and I couldn't see him, but it wasn't the fall. It was once you're on the ground and you've been struck by the lightning and you're able to sit back up, and everything's been, it's had that restructuring go on, right? That when I landed after dropping, and it, in time, it's not linear, right? This is not linear. The process is not linear. Certainly the effect of it's not linear, but it describes a cycle. I think that's a fair way to put it. And I realized in looking at that, like, that was where I was at that time. So I told my new friend Daniel, I was going to do this, and I had these difficulties. Part of the lightning strike was also falling from the Buddhist order that I was a part of. It was terrible. And it's a very long story that I don't want to get into, but suffice it to say, after completely becoming a devout, this is my whole life kind of Buddhist, and fully immersing myself in that practice and worldview, it didn't work out. It's like a divorce, and yet I couldn't, I've tried a few times to shake it off, not to be a Buddhist anymore. I have attempted practicing, if you see the Buddha in the road, kill him. And that was a practice for a long time. It launched a beautiful new body of artwork and everything in ceramic, but it didn't work, because what did I find? Well, kind of like the analogy of, it was the analogy that really came forward. I'm very visual, and the world and spirit and my soul, all of it speaks to me in image, right? Which is why tarot is such a helpful, and oracle is such a helpful means of accessing for me. But what wow, I just totally lost that train of thought. So it came back to me. All right, so we're talking about if you see the Buddha in the road, kill him. So what I recognized at a certain point was that the visual image that came to me about that particular experience was a lot like the Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan. So, if you imagine just a mental image of that mount, there's that cliffside in Bamiyan in Afghanistan, and it had, those alcoves were filled with these incredible, beautiful Buddhas that were built at the same time as the Silk Road. And what happened was the Taliban, I think it was in 2003, it would seem to me it was in 2003, they shot the Buddhas down. They killed him. They found the Buddha in the road and they killed him. And they brought down those statues. And it's fascinating because, various different heritage organizations, and art restoration organizations really, really want to see those Buddhas restored. And I cringe every time I think of them restoring those Buddhas, because what I recognized in myself, at least, was that having destroyed the Buddha, the space that was left, that like, I don't know why I'm who knows, but the space that was left in the mountainside, that cavernous space, in the shape of a Buddha, but without anything there, felt more to me like the essence of what I had been attempting to do all along. And I can't say why. I can't say what that was. I can only say that that was the best analogy that anyone could come up with. And I remember, I think I was reminded of that because I found an image of it on Pinterest. It just was like a suggested image on Pinterest, and it snagged me. And I suddenly was like, oh, and I couldn't stop looking at that image and absorbing it and being with it and finding more and researching that area. And then I began carving. I don't think I have any. I don't have any here at the house right now. I think I've sold almost all of them, but I began making like lanterns or votive candle holders that essentially had that texture and then had the Buddha's, space for the Buddha's cut out. They weren't exactly Bamiyan, but they were, they evoke it, if that makes sense. And then suddenly realized what I was doing and why and where it had come from. A little bit like kind of an unconscious process, a little bit like in oh, it's my dog dreaming on the floor. He runs and dreams and like kind of cries and whimpers when he's dreaming. It's really cute. He's probably barking at another dog in his dream. Anyway, I realized what I was doing at a certain point, and that what I was getting from that image was, the analogy for the transformation that was happening in me. It was the trying to explain to someone, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. It doesn't make any sense. And for years, it didn't make any sense to me at all, again, until it was happening. And I realized I have to kill the Buddha. And the effect of shooting him out of the alcove in Afghanistan was getting, realizing that cavernous space had more to say to me than anything I had gotten from finding the Buddha on the road and trying to befriend him, or whatever the analogy there is. The other part of that analogy that I find really fascinating is that in reality, when those Buddhas were shot down, what was found in those spaces where they had been that they were inhabiting was little caves. And these little caves that were there, which I guess is where people would have gone to live and practice, where pilgrims would have gone to hole up in a cave, on their own and practice, they were just filled with priceless paintings and artwork that was covering the walls, from the era of the Silk Road. And that actually the value of finding some of those alcoves might be just as valuable, if not more, than the Buddha statues were themselves. And, if the statues had not been shot down, those caves might never have been discovered, because the fear was that, again, the fear that we had, that the world had, that the art world had for sure, of going in, behind those Buddhas and so on, was they never wanted to go back there because they were afraid of damaging the statues. So no one was climbing them. No one was messing with the rock face behind it. Nobody knew quite what was back there. Or they at least did not feel completely safe, getting into it. So, yeah. I think that's really fascinating. And that too is also resonates with what my experience was. So back to the tower, because I just got a notification from my partner who needs to know what was happening in the house, and this relates. So there I am sitting in the hospital, and I'm thinking like, oh, that's totally what this is. That's totally the tower. That's totally the dealio. I also sat there and thought, okay, yes, and just so happens yesterday was the 9th of March, in St. Louis, we had these horrific thunderstorms. I mean, awful, horrible thunderstorms. that moved through. And like last weekend, we had snow and we had ice and temperatures that plummeted into single digits. That would have been like as late as Monday or Tuesday this week. By Friday, yesterday, the temperature got up to 66 degrees. So the weather was volatile. There was a lot of thunder and lightning. And I thought that too was very, very interesting. And I was very careful on the roads because I thought, wow, I don't want this tower thing to be that Natalie gets into a car accident or what, just make sure your consciousness shift a little bit. Like, what if there is something else? Well, I got home yesterday afternoon, and I thought, this is the perfect time for me to go downstairs, do some laundry, rah, rah, rah. And went downstairs to do that and realized that our basement had flooded. Now, that's not uncommon. When it rains, it very frequently, it's a really old house, and the basement is in the whole house is in bad condition. It's just is. It's an old house, long story, bada, bada, ba. Went down there, and I'm like, oh, it's just water. It's not a big deal, and it had clearly, like, come up a little bit, made some puddles, and then just drained and gone down. And as I was looking at the drain area, I thought, wow, it smells really bad in here. Why are there pea shells, like, frozen peas or whatever? Well, I feed those to my pet rats. They love them. They love peas. And I put them in water or whatever. And then when they're done with them, I frequently, instead of just putting them down the sink or because they're floating in, so much water, I'll just take them to the toilet and dump them in the toilet. So for anyone who has seen Meet the Parents with Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller, there's a bit where the septic tank in there, it overflows and fills their yard. And the bride's family comes out and the dad says, oh my God, what's that smell? And De Niro says, that smell, Bob, is our shit. Yeah, that smell, Nat, in your basement, that's our shit. And I'm laughing because what else can you do? You're going to laugh or cry. But yeah, even though the water level was gone, it was gnarly, and it is down there. It is waiting. And I'm making a video and have been making my video this morning because I'm really avoiding having to go down there and deal with it. It's just so gross. So I guess a traditional tarot reader maybe would say, oh, that's what your tower was. There was literal lightning, thunder, rain, etc. And I'm going to say, the answer to most of the things is yes and. I'm going to say, but the thing is, here's the difference. Finding shit in your basement that is likely your own, and your partner's. It's not the same thing. Is it inconvenient and gross and, God only knows what it's going to require. That on its own is not the tower. That is not, it's maybe, trying to think of a good RWS equivalent. It might be, shit, I don't know. It might be a 5 of Swords. It might be, it might be a 9 of Swords. It might be a 10 of Wands. I don't know, but it's not, at certain moments yesterday afternoon, it was a little bit of an 8 of Cups, I can tell you. Walking back upstairs and I'm leaving that stuff alone. But it is not the tower. It is not the tower. It's kind of that to me, it's more like a cosmic joke, that accompanied a cosmic reminder, right? Like, remember, this is what, this was part of the aftermath of your tower cycle, right? Was to recognize or the gift, it was not so much the tower as the star, right? But it had to arise from the tower. And it's interesting to me that the deck chose to deliver that message through the tower instead of the star. But as I looked at the reading, at the meanings in her deck for the star, the star wouldn't have delivered the message in the same way with the same level of impact and the reminder. So I had to come in and share that because I just found it to be so exciting. And now I've got a lengthy amount of stuff that I'm going to have to go back in and re-edit. But such is life, as Mercury in retrograde and everything else. So best laid plans in my handy dandy notebook doesn't doesn't change anything, right? It's still going to require some redoing. So anyway, I'd better leave this now and figure out what I'm going to do about laundry and what I'm going to do about the shit in my basement, the literal shit in my basement. So there we are. I wish all of you who have watched a beautiful week without shit. May your week not be filled with shit. May it be filled with something a lot more pleasant. And even if there is shit, may it run downhill, and preferably not down the hill that goes into your basement. All right. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you for watching.